Welcome to Copy Chief Radio. Today's show is a freelancer's journey episode where successful freelancers share the tactical moves that catapulted their careers through the phases of the freelancer's journey. To see all 7 phases, where you are now, and how to move forward, head over to copychief.com/phases. To check out all the Copy Chief Radio episode types, go to copychief.com/CCR. Daniel Throssell, man, it's great to have you here on the show. I've been looking forward to this. I am not alone in the category of new fan for you. I know you've been doing this for a few minutes, but feels like right now you've got this incredible momentum going. With your email list, you're doing really inventive stuff, and it's fun and it's interesting, and I'm happy for you, man. Congratulations on all that.
Well, it means a lot to hear that coming from you, Kevin.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I know you were a listener to John and I's podcast, PI4MM. John and I joke that that's the worst ever marketed podcast about marketing. I mean, that URL, PI4MM, like good luck, you know?
Well, you say that, but it's been in my head for years. You know, I've remembered that because you used to say that in every episode. It's burned into my brain. I used to actually listen to you guys while I was walking. I was this big Tim Ferriss devotee back then. And one of his things in the 4-hour work week, you know, he's like walk with, and you're bouncing this rubber ball, right? So I would like walk to and from cafes, like just bouncing this rubber ball and listening to you guys on your episodes. And more than once, you know, you'd say something, I'd be like, oh, that's cool, man. Boing, boing, boing. The ball's like in the middle of traffic there.
I'm glad we didn't get you killed.
You got a few rubber balls killed, but it was all for the bears.
Yeah, we're ball crushers. That's what we do. Oh, that's awesome, dude. So let's talk about I just want to get to know you as a writer, as a creative. You know, it's kind of rare, man, when people come along in this business and they just immediately have a voice that's strong, that's unique and fun, you know, fun to read. I've realized, and you're probably the same, I can follow like 2 or 3 people at a time, because when I find someone I want to follow, I save their emails, you know, like their emails from a friend, and I'll sit and I will read 2 or 3 of yours in a row, 2 or 3 of Chris Rozakowski, 2 or 3 of Cole Schaefer and Laura Belgrade. They're waiting on me, and I look forward to it. That is rare, man, when you can look forward to reading a marketer's emails. Well, I guess let's go back to how long you've been doing this, and then how recently has this voice that I know of yours developed?
That's a cool question, because no one's actually ever asked me that. I have been freelancing. Well, I started freelancing in 2016, I think. In 2015, I entered this contest by Ramit Sethi, which was a copywriting contest. Because I followed Ramit. I didn't even know what copywriting was. I'd never heard that word. But it's like Ramit was doing it. So I entered this contest, had to write a sales letter, and I won. With the first ever piece of copy I'd written, I won against all these other copywriters. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And I got to talk to Ramit, and he's like, so what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about copy. And I was like, I have no idea what copywriting is, but this sounds like a really freaking cool idea as a career. So what should I do? And he was like expecting this much higher level conversation. He's like, oh, so he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. Go read books. I'll give you 2 copywriters' names, Bob Bly and John Carlton. And I want you to go like follow those guys. And that's kind of how I got my entrance into the world and kind of discovered, that's around when I discovered you as well, you know, listening to John. So I started freelancing on Upwork, and I had a really good time with that, actually. In 9 months, I was at $200 an hour and doing pretty well. I did pretty well there on my first year. And then I got approached at the end of that year by a guy called Scott Pape, who is the best-selling author in Australia. And he brought me on to help launch what is now the best-selling book in Australian history. And so I worked with him for several years. I'm still working with him, but for several years doing a lot of stuff for him. And then in 2020, just when the pandemic hit, actually, in March of 2020, was when I sent out my first email to my own list. And from then it's been, I think I've missed 3 days in the last 2.5 years. So that's when I really started doing it for myself instead of for clients. And so that voice that you're talking about has been refined over those 2 years. And certainly from day one, it was something different to what most people were doing, because I was heavily influenced by Scott, whom I mentioned a moment ago. And he taught me a lot of that really fun storytelling style. And also from Ben Settle, who I am a huge fan of, very influential on me. You could probably see it in my writing too. And so those two guys were very influential on my writing. In the early days, you could really tell that. You'd look at an email and be like, oh, that's a Ben email, or that's a Scott email. You know, over time, that voice kind of developed. And I like to say that you kind of can develop your own style in a way, because what I would do is I would try out different voices and try out different characterizations in different directions. And I would look back and say, well, I like that one. I want to develop more in that direction. And so probably a year into it, I had really started to nail down what worked for me and what I liked, and, you know, the kind of storytelling that I do now. I just realized that hit really well with my audience, and I had so much fun doing it. And it's just a blast for me to write emails every day. So to me, that's like when I know I've got it right. I just love doing this.
It just feels good. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like when I'm, and by the way, I just want to point out for people listening, like that's the value of writing every day, is that how quickly in 2 years, Daniel's able to develop different voices, try different voices. And a writer has an instinct for what feels good and what doesn't. And you probably get this too, Daniel. Like I always try to write first thing in the morning, I'm in fresh brain. And if I get something that I feel out to start the day, solid. Like I don't care what happens the rest of the day. Like that, I feel like, you know, my mission was fulfilled as a writer.
Absolutely. When I get my email done, the day feels complete. When the email's not done, the day doesn't feel complete. I will say the one thing that I tried for a while doing them first thing in the morning, and I know that works for some people, but nothing had happened in the day yet. So days I would sit there for like 2 hours and have nothing. And I'd be like, and that killed my day. So at the moment, I actually write the emails around 1 p.m.-ish, because some things have happened in my day for me to draw upon. So that I find that's the easiest time, which is weird. I'd love to get it out of the way first.
Yeah. But it's almost like a reality show where you need some drama to edit together. Your wife is a central character in your emails. Let's talk about that. Like one of the things I love about what you do is very consistent. The characters, your wife, your kids. And so I feel like I am watching a show where there's characters I know and they have not predictable behavior, but I feel like I know them too. And I know like the dynamic with you and your wife. And talk about that. Like, is that something that developed as you were going? How different are those characters than in real life?
You are really, really insightful, because so firstly, a lot of what you just said does form the core, like my philosophy on telling the stories, which I haven't really developed yet for telling other people. I'm doing that for a storytelling course. But a lot of what you just said is part of the core philosophy, right? It's about making it this show that people watch and having characters that are written just like you would in a show. You know, you don't have a character come in and do something that's totally opposite to what they would normally do, because the readers would be like, what the heck? That's not why I watched this show. They want to see this particular character.
Yeah.
So there certainly is, I call it like this, like an EQ filter that you can put on audio. It amplifies some parts, attenuates some parts. And so I do that with personalities and characterizations. So there are elements that I will exaggerate of people. Like in real life, my wife is actually quite mild. And so I have to turn up certain parts of like her humor and so on to make it stand out in the emails. And for me as well, I'm a little bit different in the emails than I am in real life. Like I'm very shy in real life. I hate talking to people. And sometimes I'll play that up in emails, but sometimes it'll come across as this really brash, aggro, in-your-face guy, which is not normal in real life, but it's easy to play in the emails. Maybe it's just this repressed part of me inside that comes out on the keyboard. But it is about making these characters, and I see it really as writing a show, like you just said, and putting on an entertainment show. Because to me, like my competition isn't just other people in the inbox. It's things like Netflix and other things you could be watching as well. So the most entertaining things are the ones that are going to get your attention. And so that's really my goal with the emails. I actually learned a while ago that even now, when I send out these value emails, people say they want that. People say they want the value and the copywriting tips. But whenever I do that, that's when I get the lowest opens, the lowest engagement, the highest unsubscribes. When I do emails that are like nothing but storytelling and then a pitch, like people love it. So I just stopped trying to pretend like I'm here to teach you. The thing is, I'm gonna be here to entertain you. I will work in as much teaching as I can without detracting from that. And over time, you're going to see what's going to work. And that's worked way better for me.
Yeah, really cool. That's interesting. And so this willingness to play around with that for you, right? To allow yourself to be a creative. I think we forget too often in marketing, because that's technically where we live as copywriters, that we have to be entertaining. We have to be creative. And that needs to afford playing with ideas. And ideally, if you can do it with an audience of people, think of like a stand-up comic. You hear about this all the time in big cities, like in New York City. Oh my God, I was at this little club. We were there for a show and Jerry Seinfeld walked in and did 10 minutes, or Joe Rogan or whoever. I'm like, yeah, because they're creatives, they're working out ideas. And for us, very often for copywriters, money's on the line and blah, blah, blah. But man, when you have your own list, even if it's small at first, or just some kind of, I always say that dialogue is the most valuable thing we can have as marketers, the dialogue. Like you said, you're gauging, it's the replies to me. Like we know the other stats matter, blah, 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 open rates. But man, it's when people are compelled to hit reply and write you something, that's when you know you hit a nerve.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's when I'm being most entertaining and funniest that's working. I learned from you, the how comedy translated into copy. And so I've never considered myself a really funny person, at least in person. But when I write, I can write with some humor. So there are writers who can do that. People really like that. And I found that a lot of copywriters just don't do that. They're just too straightforward. At least if we're talking in our little copywriting marketing niche, they're just really straightforward and plain. Yeah. And they're not that funny. It really helps, I think.
Or entertaining, or it feels forced a lot. Another thing you do really well that I think this is a next level craft kind of thing, but sometimes what you want to share is, it's funny, but it's complicated. And you have to really make sure that you're translating to the reader what the sequence of events was. I'm thinking of the email where you talk about being with your kids at some play area, and the guy greases the slide. And you watch this guy grease the slide. And it was so good. I'm reading it. I'm going, this is so good because I'm able to, this is complicated. There's a guy there. He works there, but why is he greasing the slide? You don't know why he's greasing the slide. And you have to keep everything in real time and lay out. And then the sort of the punch, you know what I mean? The punchline is tied to the reveal of, and so just want to compliment that, dude. Like that is to me like true writer instinct, to where I don't know if you may have written several versions of that or how often you go back and rewrite, but man, you have to be clear first, especially with humor. If they're at all confused about what's going on or who's who, the joke, their brain can't enjoy the joke because they're trying to unpack what's happening.
That's like the third time in the, 15 minutes we've been talking that you've said something that like no one's ever identified that before. And I'm thinking, I'm starting to get worried because I told you I'm doing a course on this soon and you keep saying it all. But yes, like that, one of the biggest killers for me with storytelling is like people aren't clear on what's happening and they put too much detail or not enough detail and they can't follow through as the reader. What's the journey? Like, it's the curse of knowledge thing. You know how it all happens, how it all unfolds. And for the reader, they're coming in with a blank slate and they'll know some prior things about you, your characters, whatever you've told them, but you have to walk them through in exactly the right way. And that's the biggest thing that I see people get wrong in their storytelling is they get the flow of the release of information in the wrong order or at the wrong pace. The story you just mentioned is funny because that is one of the only emails I tried something new and I actually wrote that one mostly with voice dictation. I just went and cleaned it up. So that one was almost unique in being largely unedited structurally. And I think that is a testament to the fact that I've been doing this now daily for 2 years. I couldn't tell a story like that 2 years ago that easily. But because I've done this so much, and I agree with you that the value of daily practice at this, is now at the point where I can see the moment, and it's like this director's view where I instantly know how I need to lay out those details so people know. And I think you were just saying that as a comic as well, you develop that sense of where does it come in? Because when I see the scene, it's actually, I realize immediately what's happening, but I think I don't want the reader to realize immediately what's happening. I want to put it in this order. And so the fact that one was voice dictated kind of, I'm very pleased inside that you said that, like you picked that email, because that was the one I know I edited the least. It just came out like in that exact order. So that's I think that's just honing that sense for moments.
Yeah, 100%. It drives me crazy when I'm at a club and there's other comics and some guy will go up and do a bit where I know the audience was confused and he's like, idiots. I'm like, no, you screwed it up, dude. Like they had no idea what you were talking about, If you're a budding comedian, please tape yourself and actually listen back to it later. It may have been you. Hey, you feeling burned out at all with the client work? It can be a lot. If you've been at this for a year or more, chances are you're overbooked, overworked, underpaid, and it's getting to you. Starting to snap when people ask you, like, what are we doing for dinner? I don't know, eating? And you're like, oh, that wasn't good. Those are signs that you may be burning out. There's a fix. You've got to package up and sell your knowledge. That's right. You've worked hard to gain valuable knowledge, and you don't always have to be sitting in the chair typing away to get paid for all that knowledge. Let me show you, along with some guest experts, how to package up your knowledge for recurring income so that you can be more selective about the work you do and get paid what you deserve for the expert you are. It's September 14th, 15th, and 16th in Knoxville, Tennessee. Why Knoxville? Because it's easy to get to, but it's a long way away from the day-to-day work fog that's keeping you stuck in this cycle. So come hang with me and my team, and I'm going to show you how I've helped thriving business owners like Chris Warzakowski, Ian Stanley, Marcella Allison, Rachel Mazza, Ian Stanley, how I have helped guide them in their career to grow in the direction they want and not be stuck in the constant client cycle. Go to copychief.com/Knoxville. See what it's all about. And if it's for you, I hope to see you there. Again, I'm just going to gloat on you, man, but you're doing innovative stuff. It's another reason I was really excited to have this conversation. And again, it's creative. It's on point. Let's talk about the landing page. What do you call it? The dual
parallel welcome sequence.
Parallel welcome sequence. Yeah. So explain what that is and how you came up with it.
It's a new kind of welcome series I have where I call it email time travel. And that part of the experience is not, I didn't invent that. The part where you can click and get an email right away. I didn't invent that. In fact, I think I saw Chris Warzakowski talking about someone who'd done it. That's where I first saw that idea. But, I thought it would be fun to call that concept email time travel. And you click every email, you get the next one immediately. But the real innovation I added with that was every time you click, you land on a landing page. And originally, when I set this up, I just had it going to a page that said, check your inbox, next email's there. And then I thought, well, that's kind of boring. Why don't I put something fun there? And then I was like, every page can have its own. So why don't I tell another story that happens on these web pages? Yeah. And so when you join the welcome sequence, I think there's 9 or 10 emails at the moment. You can, in theory, get through the whole thing in just one session, click, 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 and keep getting the next emails. And you also will land on these web pages along the way. And I tell very wild fictional stories on those. Like with it's kind of a world building thing with this fictional island and copywriting themed monsters. Like I've got a guru. That's Ben Settle's word, right? The guru is like a giant kangaroo that chases you to eat you. I'm getting him illustrated too. So it's all very fun. And the cool thing is that people who don't click still go through it like a normal email sequence. So for anyone who's not that engaged, they're like just subscribing and maybe they'll warm up later, but they just get the emails like normal. So there's no change there. But for people who are super engaged, I get some people go through and binge my entire welcome sequence in 2 hours. And so that to me is super fan creation, because that is a first impression that no one else has ever left on them. They've never joined someone else's email list and still been there 2 to 3 hours later. I have people sending me emails like saying, I hate you, it's 2 a.m. and I've just gone through your entire welcome series. So some people go through and they just buy everything I have, right? So to me, it's about playing to those super fans, playing to the 1% and warming them up.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Especially last year when it was really new, that got me a huge amount of traction on the email list when people were finding out about that, because no one had done anything like that before. And I don't recommend doing it for every brand. It's something that, because we're marketers, we love marketing. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. They're like, oh, I see that, I'm going to steal this for my client. And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't, because in other industries, marketing is not very interesting. You want to keep the marketing invisible. We are a kind of a special place where if we do cool things with marketing, we're like, wow, that's cool marketing. I like that. That guy must be clever. So all this is something I am very aware of when I'm doing things like that. It's like I can draw attention to marketing in a way that other people shouldn't. But the parallel welcome sequence was a really good way for me to do that.
Yeah, it's really cool. There's an app, right? I'm trying to look for it to remember.
Yes, I think it'll be like, it's called Learnistic, Ben Settle's platform.
I think you mentioned that. I know, Troy. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I forgot to mention that I incorporate the app in there that you can actually find items in the stories and scan a QR code. Right. And it kind of unlocks training in the app. So that was also a new thing I was doing with that.
Yeah. So cool. One of the first things I ever did, you don't really show my age, but the web was brand new. And it was back, my friend and I were putting together a comedy festival, and we pulled it off like amazing. Like me and him in his tiny little office, and got the whole industry and all these famous comics to come to Chicago for the first ever Chicago Comedy Festival. Part of what made it so cool and fun for us was, I had a website, and back then you still have to ask people, do you have email? You know what I mean? You can imagine, right? Not in your whole lifetime did that happen. But what we did was we built this cool thing on his site, and it was, now there's, software that does this, but it was a choose your own adventure story thing. Right. And so we made up this comic called Johnny Blazer. He was a stand-up comic. And back then comics always used to wear blazers with the sleeves rolled up back in the 80s, And then so this guy he was trying to get to a gig, and you'd come to a moment where like, Johnny's car broke down. Should he start walking or call a tow truck? And you'd have to choose, right? And we just sat there for like 4 hours one night and just writing it screen by screen. And then my friend would code it. And then we literally did it in real time, And people loved it, man. They had so much fun with it. And again, those are the moments I remember in my creative life where we were just giggling our heads off doing a thing. And it's just like you said, it doesn't feel like work. Doesn't feel like effort, and it leads to, at the very worst, some interesting insights into marketing, right? You have to play, you have to experiment. I was really interested in, and a lot of times it's counterintuitive, I want to point out, to send somebody to download an app. There's a problem they could have with the app. They could be a pain in the ass. We're always so worried about taking away friction that we don't take chances. The other thing you said that I loved, it reminds me of Ramit, your first mentor. I remember Ramit saying, because his emails are epic and super long and full of visuals and screenshots and things. And he would say, man, if someone says, aren't you worried about attention span? And he's like, I tried worrying about attention span and it killed my creativity. Like my emails didn't sound like me. I wasn't writing from the heart. And I ultimately came to realize if I write the way I am and the way I would converse, those are the people who will read, and those are the best customers for me ultimately. And that's another thing you're doing, is you're taking your time and you're saying what you need to say, and you're building things out. So super cool. I want to talk about, you clearly a nice guy, and you seem pretty, I think you're a good dude. I'm assuming, yeah, fair to say, good dude.
I think I'm pretty inoffensive in person.
Yeah. But you have this alter ego of this takedown artist. And man, when somebody crosses you, bro, you go into Orzakowski mode. Chris is funny because Chris kind of lives there all the time. He's like, he can fly off the handle at anything. And he's so New Jersey. It's like, of course he's yelling. But you, man, like you go deep into like some Scientology stuff, like to take people down. What's behind that? And were you ever like hesitant about revealing that, or was that the natural?
No, like, so firstly, that part of me is very, very real. Like, it's kind of like the Steve Rogers before he became Captain America thing, the weak kid. And he just always wants to stand up for people and do the right thing. I remember as a kid, like watching shoplifters and so on. And I was just the scrawniest little kid, couldn't do anything. And it just made me so angry. I've always been so mad about that stuff. So I do have justice. This kind of repressed desire to stand up for stuff like that. So there certainly is a real flaming side of me that comes out sometimes. And I think the one you're referring to is when I took down that pirate website, which has tried to steal one of my courses. Yeah, and so I engineered this pretty full-on takedown. I literally took that website down for good with one email. That was a lot of fun. Those emails get the best response of anything I ever do, even better than the fun stories. If I do a really good story, I'll have people writing and saying, man, that was so funny. But I never get more engagement than when I am fighting with someone or attacking someone or taking someone down. And I try not to make this a negative thing. It's not like I hate this guy and I'm slandering them. It's almost always in self-defense, in retaliation to something they've done to me. Right. And I feel like I'm not being a jerk to do it. Like there's a moral principle underneath it. And it's funny you mentioned Chris, because Chris and I kind of have this rivalry about this. Like we just write each other fan mail about the takedown emails. Like every time he does one of his scalping emails, I'm like, that was the best one yet. I love it. And then and then when I do one like a catching pirates or just I did one recently where I saw some people on Upwork. They were bragging about having taken my courses, but they weren't in my customer list. So I made this job post and invited them to it. That was like, I need some freelancers on Upwork to help me catch pirates who are claiming to have bought my courses, and I invited them to the job. And they all reacted in different ways, right? And so I wrote that up as an email. And then Chris emails me, he's like, this is why we're friends, man. This is what I live for. So we certainly feed off each other. Honestly, when I'm writing these now, I'm like, I wonder if Chris is going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
So there's certainly some mutual competition with the scalping there.
Yeah, so good. I saw one recently where, and it was interesting because I saw the Facebook post attacking you really out of nowhere for no reason. I found it odd when I read it. And then sure enough, I didn't have to wait but a day for your response. Have you resolved that with that person? Did they reach out to you after that?
I'll add an end note to that, because there was a post that called me some very unfair things, and I think it was generally received that way. It was like, that's very unfair to say about him. It called me, said I was lying about stuff, basically, which I wasn't. I've never lied about a single claim I've made. I've never painted myself as anything I'm not. So I responded to that in a very kind of fiery way. That person actually, firstly, publicly apologized to me. And so I sent them an email, and I said, look, I really respect that. My respect for you just went a lot up that you did that. And so, like, as far as I'm concerned, we're all cool. So I put him back on my email list, and he said, cool, we're all good. So that had a happy ending. I didn't write about that in public, not because I don't want people to know that, but because it kind of happened a while after the event, and it just felt like it had come out of nowhere. But and I didn't want to make a spectacle out of, to me, it was done after that. It was like quid pro quo, and then we were fine. But I did have some people saying, a friend of mine was like, you should write about that so people know that you're not just some jerk who explodes on people. But I found that that actually has been very helpful for me. The unpredictability has actually deterred a lot of people from doing stuff. against me because they're like, oh, if he explodes, it'll be bad. And it's a good deterrent policy. People don't try and steal stuff or say mean stuff now because I might go into crazy mode. Who knows?
You could be scalping. Yeah. No, I love that because people need to defend themselves, and everything you said in your response, I thought was like super legit. Like, and I mean, it's not like you were in a stupid flame war about something neither of you knew anything about. I've known him a long time. That's why it surprised me. He's a good dude with a good heart. But that's the thing about social media, man. Sometimes you just catch yourself in an off moment and I just never do it, dude. I think for me, it's a detriment because I'm so averse to drama. I would much just rather do something else with my mind. That as a funny person, it's cost me because my filter's a little too strong. Sometimes I hold back a lot because I don't want to offend anybody. And it's usually in the moment when I come up with the joke. And I used to let it rip, and it got me in trouble a few times early on, especially speaking at seminars and things. I'd go into comic mode. I'd see something in the crowd and I would just, and I was like, ooh. And I remember like, they didn't even come here for comedy. They were not expecting comedy.
It was a marketing seminar.
Yeah.
You're heckling the light or something.
Exactly right. That kind of stuff. Yeah. Oh, here they are. Okay. The guy's like, I was on a call. I just want to get to my seat,
I have found that the drama is, I do it sparingly because it's really intense and it turns a lot of people off, but it also has been one of the most powerful things for getting attention. Like not for getting attention, for getting engagement. People cannot resist it. And so like, I'm like you, I don't use social media at all. That was reported to me by several people that this guy had said that. So that's how I knew it was actually hitting my reputation, because people like, he mentioned you, even though he didn't say my name. But I do remember the one time I've seen you get into it was you wrote an email where someone on Facebook had said Copy Chief is for newbies or something. Oh, and even you couldn't resist it. You were like, look, I don't like the drama, but I need to take this down. And you kind of unloaded a little bit on that one.
Did. Yeah.
And the irony for me is like, that's one of the most memorable emails you ever sent me, is the one where you kind of got in a bit of drama with someone. And so I keep that in mind as a marketer, is that people love that sort of conflict. Even people who say they hate drama are still glued to their screens watching the drama. And they'll say afterwards, I can't stand that. But they're there like watching. I had a very big thing last year with another marketer who had kind of copied me too much and then was very apologetic about it. And when I made a big deal of it, after trying to resolve it in private, it was a big thing. And I had a lot of people saying, I can't stand this drama. And there's one girl who's like, it's my birthday and I shouldn't have had to spend my whole birthday like glued to my screen reading all your emails about this. She said, my husband's so mad at me because we're supposed to be having dinner now and I've just been reading your emails today. Stop this drama.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's the best complaint you could ever get. You ruined my birthday. Oh, reading your stuff. Well, they say, what's that old quote about, Howard Stern? He's universally famous, right? And so back in the day when he was on terrestrial radio, he was very controversial. And somebody did a study and they figured out people who say they love Howard Stern listen for an hour a day. People who hate him listen for 3 hours a day. They're doing their duty. They're taking notes and they're reporting him, It is entertainment. You're putting on a show, and every once in a while you need a climax and you need to have this. But it's cool to be able to jump into that, jump back out without people going, I don't know who Daniel's becoming. Like, this is weird. It's not that. It's like one shot, boom. And it makes it, it's one of those things where if you get wronged, like I have a situation I need to write about, but I gotta like muster anger, Daniel. Like I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I don't get, so it's so hard to anger me at this point, like things roll off, but little things that are just, again, it's, the theme is injustice, like I will spend way more time trying to correct a mistake Amazon made for $50 when I may be overpaying for something else because I enjoy it, not thinking twice. But it's the injustice of their mistake that feels like you can't let that go, right?
Absolutely. I can't resonate with that more, Kevin. When you say that, I'm like, yes, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. We're the Justice League of copywriting. All right, buddy. This has been so good, man. Let's do more of these. I'm a fan. I want to keep getting to know you and your stuff. And it's really great, man. If you get to travel, it'd be great to have you come over for one of our events and hang out and teach people. I know you're building a real following, and you're going to be a strong voice in this industry for a long time, man. So thanks for making time with me today and giving us some insights.
Thank you. That would be a huge honor.
Awesome. So it's persuasivepage.com. If you don't already know, that's where you get on Daniel's list. And if you're not there yet, I'm excited for you because you get to experience all the stuff. When you join is the best part in some ways, because you get the parallel and you get the time travel and you get the whole bit. So enjoy it. And thank you, Daniel. We'll talk to you again soon, man.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. Copychief.com/CCR.